Good day. Greetings to you all in the name of our King Jesus Christ. Friends and our viewers, welcome. Now, in this episode, I want to answer this question. Are we already in the Third World War? If you look around the world, you may ask this question, and it is a very legitimate question, especially when you consider what is happening in the Middle East, in Europe, and also in the global south, or in the seas of the global south. When you look into what China is busy doing, flexing their naval muscles. Now, before I get into all the details and nitty-gritties, I would like to bring to your attention that Jesus himself, when he was asked a question about the last days, Jesus himself said in Matthew chapter 24, you will hear of wars and rumors of wars, and do not be, especially, let me read from Matthew chapter 24, verse 4. Jesus said, see to it that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming that they are Christ, and many will deceive many. You will hear wars and rumors of wars, but see that you are not alarmed. These things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, earthquakes in various places, famines and earthquakes. And all these are the beginning of the birth pains. Now, I am sure over the history, over the past centuries, many a times, students of Bible have read these verses and they draw the connection between this prediction of Jesus and their realities. I can only imagine that in the time of the First World War, students of the Bible probably paid attention to these verses, and also during the time of the Second World War. Now, are we on the verge of the Third World War? Now, this is the question that I want to draw your attention to. We know as a matter of fact that the current global dynamics is going to either break into a massive global great war for power and dominance, or it will subside. But in the light of the Bible prophecies and in the light of the global developments, the chances are becoming less and less that the current tensions will subside and open the way for diplomacy and peace. In fact, all the indicators more and more point to an inevitable global conflict. Now, if you turn your attention to the Middle East, in the last 2 weeks' time, something happened that many people did not foresee coming. In Syria, rebel forces launched a massive, sweeping, fast attack against the Syrian regime, which was a good friend of Russia, and they have overthrown the government. Today, Syria is effectively up for grabs for anyone, although currently the rebel forces have established an interim government. But the reports come that they continue to fight among themselves for territory, for dominance, for recognition, and etc. A careful study of the Syrian case also reveals that it is not necessarily the people of Syria fighting for their lives only, but also international actors are taking place in this great war in Syria, from the USA to Israel to Turkey to Russia. Russia pulled out of the war in Syria because Assad has been thrown out and Russia pulled back. Iran is keeping quiet, but at the same time we see that the Shia Muslims are fighting against Sunni Muslims. So the war goes on in Syria. Turkey has their own ambitions and they have their own agendas that they want to implement in this territory which we call Syria. So it is quite likely that in the weeks to come and in the months to come, the global map will be altered. The global dynamics will be vastly different than what it was. So at the same time, if you look at a little further north of Turkey, the war between Russia and Ukraine is taking another shape day by day. Although there are massive casualties on both sides, especially on the Russian side, Russians have been gaining more territory lately. What will now happen, we don't really know for sure, but we can say so far that whatever happens from here forward, it is not going to be going back to what it was before this war in Ukraine began. The Ukrainian population is dispersed all over the world. Their cities and towns are completely destroyed. Russian population have been decreased greatly by many Russian soldiers literally being sent to slaughterhouse in this war, and many Russians also running out of their countries so that they shouldn't be forced into this war by their government. And at the same time, one of the most powerful weapons in this Russia-Ukraine war was probably the financial sanctions that was put on the Russian government, which completely destroyed Russian economy. Right now, in Russia, in the inner circles of Kremlin, there are political voices that are now expressing their displeasure, discontent with the leadership of Putin himself. So we are now looking at a situation that there can possibly even be another throwing over or toppling of government in Russia itself. When the government in Ukraine was thrown over by the rebel forces, everyone who knows the story of what is busy happening in international politics immediately understood that the person who is really defeated in Ukraine more than Assad himself was Putin. In fact, Russia lost the war in Ukraine from whatever angle we look at it. The losers of the war in Ukraine was Russia and Iran. And now this defeat might even go as far as Kremlin. And right now, as I'm recording this, there are debates and discussions going in the inner circles of Kremlin regarding whether they should topple the leadership of Putin over, or they shall continue allowing Putin take Russia further into dissension, and financial crisis is already out of control. So while all of this happening, Americans are flexing their muscles with the new American president. Before he became president, he already has so much say in the global dynamics. I'm talking about Donald Trump. Before he take the office in White House, he already is exerting a lot of influence and power in international politics. And of course, we didn't even touch on the China issue yet. China is, as I am recording this, as we are talking now, China is busy flexing their naval muscles in the global south. In fact, if you look at the Chinese harbors all over Africa and the global south, you will be shocked to see that China has already, in the past few decades, established one of the most efficient harbors network in the global south, in fact, reaching up to global north. And these are not just commercial harbors, these are also used by the Chinese naval forces. And this is coming as a direct threat to the American hegemony. And ultimately, this great war of power is fought between three great powers: the USA, China, and Russia. I feel very sorry for the people of Ukraine. In fact, they did not choose this war. This war had nothing to do with Ukraine itself, actually. It was all about Russia and America fighting their war in the Ukrainian territory because of the massive natural resources of Ukrainian territory and its geopolitical importance. Both of them wanted to control that place. Now a similar scenario is playing out in Syria. And at the moment, Israelis are trying to take out all the leftover military installations of Assad regime in Syria so as to safeguard their land. And at the same time, Islamist groups are trying to establish their hegemony of the Syrian territory. But While all this is happening, Turkey has its own agendas for that piece of land, and they are using their proxies to exercise their power over that land. Now, as all of this is happening, how does that relate to us here in South Africa? Well, it relates to us in so many direct ways. When the global economy is affected, it is affecting us directly. Although we are far in the south, our relationship with China and Russia might turn and bite us if China and Russia is losing, as they have been losing so far. And in the middle of all of that, the most important question that we, the believers of Jesus Christ, need to ask ourselves: how do I process this, and how do I respond to this on a personal level? I am making this recording and sharing this with you not as a news reporting, but with an intention to bring you onto the same page of global realities, which will sooner or later affect our daily lives. In the South, here down in the South, South Africa, many times Christians seem to be somewhat oblivious to the global dynamics. But sooner or later, these dynamics come and affect us directly. So how can we respond as believers of Jesus Christ here in South Africa? I think firstly, I want to remind you what I just read out of the Bible at the beginning of this program. Jesus said, in the last days there will be wars and rumors of wars, but we should not be alarmed. From Psalm 2, we read that although the leaders of this world, the governors, the governing elite of this world make plans against the elect of God, God looks at them from heaven and laughs at them. In the light of these two passages, I want to remind you again, God is in control. God of heaven and earth, God of the Bible, is in control, and none of these things come as a surprise to him. In 2025, when Donald Trump takes office, we might very well find ourselves a global war for power between these three great powers, Russia, China, and the USA. In fact, the current global war for power is already happening. We see this happening in Ukraine, we see this happening in Syria, and of course I didn't even mention to you what is happening in Georgia. Georgia is further northeast of Turkey and southeast of Russia. Right now in Georgia, there is a great turmoil going on between two political opinions: those who favor to be under Russia and those who favor to be part of the European Union. And it might very well pan out in the weeks to come that Georgia might plunge into another war similar to what is happening in Syria or similar to what is happening in Ukraine, again involving Russian hegemony. And the Middle East situation is not going to go away. Although we wish that in the Middle East, the current interim leadership will establish a democratic government and will serve people the dignity and freedom they want, I am very skeptical about it. If I look at the resume of the people, the rebel forces who have established themselves as the new interim government, I am skeptical about the terrible things that might still happen in Syria in these very uncertain times. So in the light of all of these, Donald Trump is coming, and he is coming with great force, with great momentum, with great backing from American folk, American people. What will he do? Will he try to resolve all these conflicts all over the world, from the global south, from the Chinese Navy more and more expanding their dominance, all the way to north, all the way to Russia and Ukraine and the Middle East? Or will they also turn and respond with force and military dominance? So we might find ourselves in 2025, starting with January, we might find this world plunging deep into a great global conflict between these three global powers, China, Russia, and the USA, for dominance and influence. If that happens, friends, that is at the least a third global Cold War. But in the worst case, it might be an actual third world war. And how must we respond to it as believers? As I said, let us not panic, because Jesus said, you're going to hear the wars, rumors of wars, reports of wars, possibilities of wars, or actual wars. Don't panic. These things must happen, said Jesus, because these things are the birth pains for the last days, for the coming of Christ, for the end of the age. We know from all the other indicators that we are indeed in the last days, and the return of Jesus is drawing near day by day. So we shouldn't panic, we should rather trust in the Lord. Habakkuk, a prophet of God in the Old Testament, he could see the end times, and he made some astonishing prophecies regarding the end times. And then in the end of those prophecies, he said, but the righteous people of God shall live by faith in the end times. That is in Habakkuk chapter 2, my friends. I think it's chapter 2, verse 4. Now, this is a time in which we, the believers of Jesus Christ, should really learn to trust in him for our daily well-being. And also we need to turn back to praying and interceding for our country, for our people, and even for the people all around the world. I don't think the Ukrainians wanted to be expelled from their homes. I don't think the Ukrainians wanted this war. I don't think Syrians wanted to go through what they've gone through in the last 13 years since 2011. And I don't think they want even more war and more conflict. I don't think Israelis wanted the terror attacks happened in October 2023 and everything that ensued after that. So the people don't necessarily want, not necessarily people don't want this. People do not want this. But here's the disturbing and often unrecognized fact of wars and conflict. Often wars and conflicts are of spiritual nature. Although we are physical beings, we are also spiritual. And everything that happens in physical is actually a shadow of what is taking place in the spiritual. And we know that we are in the last days, and there is a lot of cosmic wars happening in the spiritual realm, and we are experiencing it. Secondly, there are many greedy, wicked, evil warlords, government leaders, politicians, who will not blink their eyes to plunge their nation into bloody wars for personal gains. And that is another reality that we are sitting with all over the world. So in the light of all these, I want to encourage every one of you who believe in Jesus Christ to pray for the people who are trapped in these war zones. And if the war is if the Third World War is going to really physically take place in 2025, when Russia, China, and the USA really clash with one another for more global dominance, then we might see more people, millions of more people being entrapped in various war zones. So this will then automatically require of us more intercession, more prayer for their, first and foremost, for their spiritual well-being, which is they should believe in Jesus Christ, give their lives to Jesus Christ so that they may have eternal life. Secondly, for their physical well-being. And so this is a quick update on this, to the question of are we in the Third World War already? We might very well be stepping into it. We might very well be stepping into the Third World War as the year of 2024 comes to an end. The year of 2025 is coming closer, and a brand new presidency in the USA with a very strong emphasis of national interest and security. This might change everything. So my friends, may our Lord and our King Jesus Christ bless you, and may we all turn our eyes on him, and may we choose to live by faith and not by fear. May we trust in God, and may we serve him as the salt and light on earth, as the messengers of the gospel of Jesus Christ. God bless you, and goodbye.